Hello, everyone. Welcome to the afternoon news. My name is Ashley, and I'm here interviewing C.S. Lewis today on the Illustrated Screwtape Letters. This book has been flying off the shelves, and people just can't seem to get enough of it. So, I have a few questions for Mr. Lewis that I'm going to ask him today. Starting off with, why did you choose to call this book The Screwtape Letters?
Well, I wanted to name the two demons that have central roles in these letters very purposefully. So they're called the Screwtape letters because Screwtape is writing to Wormwood, of course. And Screwtape, number one, Screwtape in the dictionary, and of course, philosophers, of course, have noticed this in my writing, but in the dictionary, it means to like mess up, corrupt. And that's what Screwtape, his ultimate agenda is to carry out the agenda of Satan, which is as revenge and as hatred and anger towards God to corrupt the earth, to corrupt his beautiful creation. That's what he did in the Garden of Eden. It was the perfect, beautiful place, and he corrupted it by tempting Adam and Eve. And so Screwtape is just further down in the corporate um, ladder of hell, and he is trying to screw up the world and corrupt people who are looking to God or not looking to God.
How did you come up with the idea for this book?
Well, I wanted to number one make a book. A lot of times philosophy books are boring and people don't want to read them. As you know, through my other books, like the Narnia series or um my other books, I try to keep them interesting to keep the readers connected. And so number one, these chapters are short. I wanted to keep the readers connected through that. Number two, I think that especially in the time that we are now with like World War II happening and England just becoming more secular and more all these new fashion and modern activities and things like that. Um, I want Christians to be able to understand temptation in a new way about how the devil comes to seek, kill, and destroy, and so do all of his followers, and that we should always be on guard for temptation no matter what. That um, the main idea for this book was to try to convey temptation, but in a satirical way where people could get a laugh, they'd be interested, that all Christians would want to read this book, not just Christians who are deep philosophers and theologians. And yeah, I wanted everybody to read this.
Hmm. Why did you choose to write it in letter format, not just an insight into how a devil thinks?
So I chose to write it in a letter format so that I could cover different topics easily. I wanted to have Screwtape talk to Wormwood in a way that Wormwood is out in the field doing the hard work, and Screwtape's just back in hell in the corporate CEO life, bossing him around what to do. That's part of the satire in the book, is that um, hell is presented in a very businessy way, right? And they're not concerned with finding the truth in any way. They're just concerned with corrupting what the enemy or what the Lord has planned for humanity, and how we are supposed to be doing good, how we're supposed to have humility, love, perseverance. And they don't care that those things are the truth. They know that they're the truth, but they're so consumed with the fact that um, they want to ruin the enemy's plan. And so I wanted to cover all these little things that they're trying to corrupt in these little letters. Also, back to the readability, I wanted the chapters to be short, entertaining. Also, it's funny to see how much Screwtape condemns Wormwood, telling him how bad of a job he's doing, how he's letting the subject slip through his fingers, and ultimately to see them condemn each other at the end of the book, how um, they hate each other and how they hope that they they just completely their relationship disintegrates because um the subject is looking to God in the time of war. And so I wanted to write it in letter format so that we could cover a lot of different issues, different topics, and keep it readable.
Why did you only let the senior devil have dialogue?
Well, I really wanted to let Wormwood have dialogue, but it just wasn't possible to keep this book under To keep it readable and to keep it not super long, I just had to have Screwtape have writings. I also wanted to emphasize the satire because I think the funniest part is when Screwtape is condemning Wormwood, and so really wanted to make fun of hell. The thing that Satan hates the most is being made fun of. And so by doing this through satire, not only am I trying to show how the devil to prepare Christians and showing them how the devil wants to tempt them, but I also want to make fun of Satan because that's what he hates most. And this is pleasing to the Lord, and to just make fun of them. It gave me great pleasure.
In letter 7, you talk about how many Christians say they believe in forces and not spirits, and this can lead to issues. Can you elaborate on this?
Yes, so many Christians, as it covered in letter 7 a lot, how Christians often believe in forces, these big dark forces, but they don't believe in spirits. Well, what are demons? They are spirits. And so by not believing in spirits, this puts Christians at a great disadvantage to be tempted all the time. And spirits are very real. They're scary, they're active, they're present. Spiritual warfare is a very real thing. And so for Christians to just deny their existence would be a horrible thing. And so that's something that I wanted to cover in the church. I wanted to emphasize this for soldiers. There's going to be evil things in the battlefield, especially in World War II. I wanted to show this. And spirits are real, and I wanted to try to convey my belief of that to other Christians, because if they don't believe in spirits, they're that much easier to be tempted by them.
How are you able to tie in satire so effortlessly in this novel?
Once again, it was my pleasure to make fun of Satan. It's the thing he hates most. It's degrading, demeaning, makes him angry. It makes his power less. And that's the whole fun of it, is making fun of him, making fun of hell, making fun of his followers for being such idiots and hypocrites, because they know these things that they're talking about by trying to convince Christians that humility is bad, or, for example, trying to convince them that love is bad, or all these different things, or tempting them with things of the world. They know that Christianity is right, and yet they're so consumed with hatred of the Lord that they're trying to convince the subject otherwise, and that's not the case. And so there was no way I couldn't make this satirical, because it's hilarious how consumed with hatred they are and how disgusting these creatures are.
How could you tie in biblical lessons if you could only talk from the perspective of a demon?
So this was hard, for sure, because I wanted to maintain the reality of, I am talking from a demon's perspective. They're not going to know all of the virtues of the Lord, or they do, but they don't know how to convey the goodness of him. And yet I was able to do this, I hope, in a way that by them showing by Screwtape commanding what Wormwood should do, he was able to show that through their wrongs, it shows the Lord's rightness, and how a lot of times Screwtape would explain what the Lord wants. The enemy, he would be like, the enemy wants this. The enemy wants you to be happy and to be like him and to be sanctified. And the enemy wants a bunch of little hymns running around and doing his good works. That's what's crazy, is that they want a bunch of little people that are like him. He doesn't want them to dislike him. They want him to be a part of him and his community. And by him thinking that this is so weird, Christians are able to recognize while they're reading this, no, that's what the Lord actually does want. Like, that's the whole funny part, is that when Screwtape says that's crazy, Christians are like, no, it's not. That's just what the Lord intends for his followers, a life of beauty, and to live with him. And even though it won't be easy, of course, that's what the Lord wants. And so I was able to convey some of those things by what seems so crazy to Wormwood or to Screwtape is actually the reality and the goodness of living with the Lord.
In letter 9, you talk about the devil convincing believers that their faith was just a phase, making them question their faith altogether. Can you elaborate on this issue?
Yes. So a lot of times when people have encounters with the Lord, especially recently, as we've seen the church really reach out to the youth and for the war and like trying to tackle issues like depression and sadness. There's been a lot of crusades for the youth. And so they get on this spiritual high. And so they're very consumed with the Lord, and it's a beautiful thing. And then they come back to reality in a way. And when that high could be the reality, but they come back to real world, which I mean, like it is a tough place. We live in a world that is consumed by other things. And so when they come back to those realities, oftentimes they're like, oh, what I felt, I was just tired. I was just full of emotion. That wasn't real. When in reality, that was very real. And what they felt then, they can feel now. And even though they don't, that doesn't mean that the Lord has stopped working. That doesn't mean that the Lord is not good anymore. The Lord is not just an emotion. He's much more than emotion. And he's still working even when we don't feel his emotions. And so that's one of the biggest lies that Satan uses, and it works. And just saying, oh, that was just a phase. That's what at one point Screwtape tells Wormwood, like the word phase itself is such a powerful weapon for us. Like we can use that so much for our advantage. And it wasn't just a phase, it's part of your life, and you should try to carry it on because it's the same God the whole time. And you should not let your feelings or emotions completely control how you live your faith. And so a phase, don't let the enemy tempt you with that. That was one of the main things I wanted to get across in the Screwtape letters.
Instead, the safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, milestones, without signposts. This was in letter 12. Can you show what the senior devil tried to show in this quote, and why did you include this?
Yes, so as we know, it's a slippery slope to go to hell. I think what a lot of Christians think though is that it's like these big actions that result in you going to hell, and that's not the case. I mean, like it can be, but um the road to hell is not this, it's this. It's very, very gradual. You don't see yourself going down it. The enemy is so good at lying. A lot of times, what Screwtape was telling Wormwood was don't make it too obvious. Don't make your actions too obvious, because then you will awaken the subject to what we are doing. That's not what they want to do. They don't want these big things. They want these little tiny sins and little tiny thoughts and little tiny actions and little tiny lies to pile and pile and pile and pile up. And this is how they turn people away from the Lord and bring them down to hell and have their way with them. That's what they do to us every day, to try to give us these little tiny lies throughout our day to convince us that we are not good enough, or to not things that we don't even notice. We don't even notice that we're gossiping and have hatred in our heart. We don't even notice that we lie. We tell little white lies. We don't even notice that we have hatred in our heart for certain people in our life. We think that's okay. So it's these small things that add up, and it's not the big, oh my gosh, that person cheated. Like, yes, that's horrible, but are you being judgmental and have hate in your own heart? Is that the small thing that the devil's trying to get you to do by them sinning? So the small things add up, and that's another thing I wanted to emphasize. This is again why I wrote in so many smaller letters, so that I could hit a lot of different points. It's like an onion. I just wanted to have people peel back all the layers.
Why did you make the Christian subject of the novel a male and not a female?
Well, I really wanted to cover the horrible topic of sexual sin, how the devil uses sex to corrupt the minds, not only of men, but of women as well. But I wanted to take a more conservative standpoint on this because it is mainly in men. We're in the 1940s. Pornographic magazines are coming out. It's a deep, dark time. And so I didn't want to get too controversial. 9 out of 10 times in our today's world, It's men having these issues, and I'm not women have these issues all the time. Trust me. I mean, like, it's not a one-sided thing, but I wanted to write from the viewpoint of a man because if right now the men need help. And so I wanted to talk about these sexual sins, how the devil uses sex to exploit Christians, to corrupt their minds, to feed them lies, to feed images in their mind, which then in turn corrupt their dreams, corrupt their thoughts, corrupt their words, corrupt their jokes. So I really wanted to hit the issue of sex, which a lot of times we cower and we don't talk about it in the 40s, but it's a huge issue that needs to be taken care of.
Why did you make him a soldier going into World War II?
Well, I really wanted to write this book, and a lot of times I was thinking of, oh, should I ignore the issue altogether? But I didn't want to be passive in this. I wanted to address the war that's going on, the hatred that's going on in Eastern Europe and in Germany. Also to try to grasp the fact of the English involvement in the war. A lot of people think we shouldn't even be involved, and yet I think it's a good thing that England is involved. I'm trying to show that while we are inducing killings and bombings and things, who would stop Germany if it wasn't for us? I mean, like, with us and the Americans, we're the only two forces that can take down these Germans and the Japanese. And we have to unite. And a lot of people are against the English involvement, but I wanted to emphasize my support in this. And while that's not the main goal, I wanted to hit that. Another thing is that brought a great segue into talk about anxiety, fear, lies, stuff like that. So I wanted that to be included for the soldier to have thoughts of anxiousness, anxiety, fear, and how Screwtape instructed Wormwood to have him sit in that fear, have him sit in that anxiety, to keep him alive as long as he could, so that he could continue to have these horrible thoughts and possibly reject his faith. And so yeah, the war not only did I need to take a stance, but I wanted it to bring in fear, anxiety. Yeah.
In letter 16, you criticize Christians for judging the church on personal criteria and finding one that quote unquote fits them. The devil shows delight in this. So tell us, what are you trying to show to readers?
So I think a big topic today when Christians are looking for a church is like, oh, I want to find the right church. I want to do this. I want them to have this quality and this quality, and I want them to teach these things and this, and I want them to agree with this group and disagree with this group. And while making sure that your church is teaching correct things biblically, this is also the perfect thing for Satan and demons to use to separate Christians and incite hatred in our own religion. What should unite us is the blood of Christ. It is what unites us. And the Lord would be completely distraught and disappointed to see us separate over all these different things. And for Anglicans to never talk to Baptists, and for all these denominations to just have hatred for one another. And while there are topics that you need to stand up for, your church should challenge you. They should not be just supporting everything that you think. You same likewise. You should challenge each other in your faith. And while you're judging how they teach the whole time, that is completely taking away from what the Lord is trying to show you. And what is the Lord trying to show? What is the Lord putting this church in your life to try to show you in your faith? And this is I don't think I can explain this well enough. But for example, I want to show a certain quote from my book for chapter 16. Just give me 1 second. In the second place, the search for a suitable church makes the man a critic, where the enemy wants him to be a pupil. And the enemy is, of course, referring to God in that. So the Lord wants us to learn in church. We should not be a critic. And while there are things we need to stand up for and our beliefs, and we know what the Bible has instructed us, do not walk into church with the idea of being a judge and a critic. You're there to learn, to hear what the Lord is telling you. And that's why being a pastor and a priest is such a big role, because you don't want to influence someone in the wrong way. And so we have to be proactive in making sure that's not happen. But check your heart when you walk into church, because you need to be a pupil and to receive, not to be a critic and just lose the idea of the whole message. Did we cover questions 5 and 6? I don't think we did. Let's do question 5. Just do it. Come on.
Did you ever consider writing it from the viewpoint of an angel?
No, I did not want to write the Screwtape Letters from the idea of being an angel, because I wanted to do something radical. I wanted to shake up the books of these days. I also did not feel worthy to write from the viewpoint of an angel. I don't think that anybody should try to write from the viewpoint of God or the viewpoint of an angel. While John Milton is an incredibly smart man, I don't agree with what he did in Paradise Lost. I don't think you should ever try to write from the viewpoint of God. I think that could almost be seen as blasphemy. So I wanted to write from a demon, because this is not something that people usually do. How do you even think in this perspective? It's preposterous. But like, it was a very hard thing to do, but it was satisfying and fun for me to make fun of demons and Satan.
Why is the junior devil named Wormwood?
Well, throughout the Bible, biblical philosophers and theologians, wormwood is a symbolic name for bitterness of the earth, because during troubled times. So I thought it fit perfectly, because right now England is very troubled with what's going on in Europe, Eastern Europe, with the Holocaust and the things going on in Germany. Also, people are angry because of England's involvement in the war. So Wormwood is also the one in the story executing, tempting the subject and making him feel doubt and insecurity and lies and fear and anger and hatred. And so Wormwood is the one bringing that bitterness into earth. So I thought that fit perfectly. Also, Wormwood, plant botany wise, is a plant who is a very bitter plant, disgusting, gross. People don't want anything to do with it. So it was a perfect name.
And for our final question of the interview, what did you want Christians to learn about temptation in the Screwtape Letter?
Overall, I wanted Christians to recognize that temptation is a much more complex issue than we thought, that we give it credit for. These demons, while we make fun of them and they are stupid, and they're crafty. And for example, humility. We may be a very humble person, but then in that humbleness, we create pride. And the devil creates pride in us for being humble. Or these fears and anxieties, the devil won't let us stop thinking about them, so that he can prowl upon us and incite fear and questioning our faith in the Lord. He can also include so many thoughts in our mind that we forget to turn to the Lord in times of need. In the times of good, the devil will tempt us with things and make things seem like they're going really well, so that we only turn to the Lord in times of bad, and so that he can prowl upon us in the times of good. And so these demons and Satan, they are very good at predicting human nature. They're the ones that introduce sin into the world, and they won't stop doing that. The devil is a liar. He's good at what he does. He's disgusting, but if you ever at any point lose sight on the fact that he is trying to tempt you and bring you to hell, that's when you will be at risk. And so temptation, we need to be on guard 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every single day of the year. And one of the most powerful weapons I would give to my fellow Christians is the fact that you can make fun of the devil all day long. While you can talk to to the Lord, you can also talk to Satan and demean him and make fun of him and degrade him, because that's what he hates the most. And so be in prayer all day. But also, if you're wanting to demean the devil, go ahead right on with that, because he hates it. and never lose sight on what we are working for, and that's to spend eternity with the Lord. So I encourage everyone to buy my book, The Screwtape Letters. It's a wonderful read. You can buy them used, very cheap. And once you read it once, I encourage you to read it again because you'll find things that you never thought you would have found the first time. So
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Lewis, for coming on air to be interviewed today. Again, you can find his copy everywhere, and we hope you have a great rest of your evening.